welcome to Whine Club. I'm Stephanie, and this is the playlist where I drink good wine and I whine about bad books. So cheers. So today we're going to be talking about a book that had a good amount of hype online, but left me kind of disappointed. We are talking about The Ladies of the Secret Circus by Constance Sayers. Now, I want to preface this review by saying that the review is solely about the book, not about the author. It is solely about the work that she put out and not her as a person. Also, it should go without saying, but there are going to be spoilers in this review. So let's read the back cover copy to see what we're getting ourselves into. The surest way to get a ticket to Le Cirque Secret is to wish for it. Paris, 1925. To enter the Secret Circus is to enter a world of wonder. A world where women weave illusions of magnificent beasts, carousels take you back in time, and trapeze artists float across the sky. Bound to her family's circus, Cécile Cabot knows no other world until she meets a charismatic young painter and embarks on a passionate affair that could cost her everything. Virginia, 2004. When Laura Barnes' fiancé disappears on their wedding day, her desperate search for answers unexpectedly leads her to her great-grandmother's journals. Soon Laura is swept into a story of a dark circus and ill-fated love, and a curse that has been claiming payment from the women in her family for generations. A curse that might be tied to her fiancé's mysterious fate. So, God, reading that back cover copy, I really wanted to love this. The premise is so good. The setup is so good. Normally, if I stay up until 1 a.m. reading, it means that it's a good book. Didn't exactly pave true for this case. I really just wanted to be done with it. I really thought about DNFing it several times, but a book has to be really terrible for me to do that. I think there's only like 3 or 4 books that I've ever truly just tossed into my DNF pile. Now, I am going to cover the good, the bad, and the ugly in this book. So, to start off with the good, there are some really great ideas here and decent mysteries. The magical side of things is a fantastic lure to get people into it. And then I also really like the chemistry between Lara and the character of Ben and their relationship. I also felt that her relationship with her mother, Audrey, was well done and realistic. The circus idea was also fantastic. It's just the execution left something to be desired, but it was good in its creativity. And throughout the book, I kept hoping that, okay, the circus is going to be a bigger part, right? Right? It's in the title. It's going to be a bigger part of the book, right? I also appreciated that the world building was pretty good, and the elements that were there for the dark, macabre kind of setup for a demonic circus, I felt they were really well done. I also did enjoy the descriptions of Paris in the 1920s, and just kind of that mixture between leaving the circus world and entering the mortal world, and kind of that back and forth. I thought that was really fun. I also thought that some of the plot twists or changes in the story were done really well, such as Laura's possession or the reveal of who Cécile really was. Now let's move on to the bad. So on the bad, it is the sheer volume of descriptions of things that don't matter. Like, what was up with all the music, the art, and the food descriptions? Pick one. Like, there were just so many details about things that don't matter that I eventually started kind of just skimming over big paragraphs because I know, okay, it's going to just be mind-boggling details about things that, in the end, I don't need to actually understand. And then when it would come time to need descriptions of otherworldly or demonic things, there's nary a description to be found. What the hell? Like, one of the things that really stood out to me, so Laura owns a radio station, and on page 67, at 7, Bob pushed back from the table and was quickly off. Laura heard the door shut behind him as she climbed into the chair and wheeled up to the control desk. She thought that she was probably one of the few DJs who didn't like the sound of her own voice. Her vocal cords sounded as though they'd been run over with sandpaper. Smoky, they called it. Pulling her blonde hair into a ponytail, she swallowed hard as she pressed the mic button and turned up the volume, then pushed the station ID button at the top of the hour. 99.7 K-Rock played the deep or obscure tracks on an album, not just popular top 40 songs, except for 3 hours each Sunday night, when she'd play punk and new wave. Bauhaus, Television, The Cure, The Slits, Concrete Blonde, and House of Love. The college kids would call her and beg her for the Ramones or the Violent Femmes, always the Femmes. Laura laid out her first hour of songs, something she liked to do, although a lot of on-air talent chose songs on the fly. First up was a Led Zeppelin 2 set. She placed Achilles' Last Stand on turntable 1, turned the knob to the cue setting, and set the needle on the track. Then she pressed the start button. The turntable wound the record slowly until she heard the beginning chords of the song. When she detected the first few notes, she hit the stop button, rotating the record backward with her fingers until the vinyl made a growling noise at the opening chords. She repeated the ritual with how many more times on turntable 2. Do we have to know that she pushed the mic button and the station ID button and that she set it up to cue and then she had to press the start button? Like, oh my god, you put music on the radio. Like, it's not that complicated. We don't need all this freaking description. It's just, the story really got bogged down with that, and I would be curious if the book would have ended up 50 to 100 pages shorter if we had just cut out the sheer number of descriptions in this thing. Also, kind of on a tangent of the descriptions being kind of bad, some of the dialogue is just bad. Like, there's a scene at the end when Laura is confronting her great-great-great-grandfather, I think, the demon that, like, started her family. So, yeah, he's talking about how he's been following her and, you know, having a hand in her destiny. So, page 351. She was very much inside herself now, as if she were experiencing the fuzzy effects of a painkiller. While somewhere in the distance, she heard Alcazar continue his monologue. Esme knows it's coming to an end. She knows that Lara is the most powerful creature to come down the line. I've made you the strongest magical creature that I can for the sole purpose of stopping my daughter. That, Lara, is why she wants to kill you. There's no subtlety in that. And, I mean, Alcazar also just has weird dialogue. But again, like, it just, I don't know. There's no nuance to it. It's just, I made you the most powerful being. That is why she's coming to kill you. It almost reads like it was written for children who potentially can't understand the subtext of a conversation. It just, I don't know. We're all adults here. You can hide some of the characters' motivations in their dialogue a little bit better. I promise you I can follow along. Kind of going back to the radio station that she owned. So she owned that with who she thought was her father. And there is a lot to do with, like, music because of her father and the mystery around her father. But it's so drawn out and kind of ends up leading to nothing. Why? Why do you do this to me, books? Like, stop giving me little subplots that just drop out of the picture. On the music front, in the acknowledgements, I mean, apparently Sayers is really into music, which, cool. But again, pick a lane and stay in it. Does Laura connect with music? And I also would have expected, if music plays such an important part of it, that would have come back or, I don't know, helped her channel her powers or something, or perform at the circus. There's a lot of music and her working at the radio station that doesn't really come into play. Like, I get letting us know more about Laura and, like, what's important to her, but make it add something to it, especially later when, like, there's so many scenes of her just working on the art or studying the art or looking at these paintings. And then again, there's just other descriptions of, like, food that it's like, why are there so many descriptions of things that, like, again, aren't being used to their fullest? Moving on, I normally like diary entries in books to kind of break up the structure. Actually, one of the books I read recently was When the Night Bells Ring, and that uses diary entries really well because they're written like diary entries. The diary entries in this are not written like diary entries. Sure, they have dates, but it's essentially first-person point of view. It's not a diary entry. It's complete with conversations and, like, settings and understanding how other characters feel. Like, that's not how people typically write their diaries. So either commit to the theme and actually do diary entries that helps keep some of that mystery going, or just do a dual perspective. It honestly would have worked better that way, where we follow Cecile in the past and then come to understand how their timelines merge, instead of just, oh, well, I'm reading this diary entry that is written like a novel. Like, no, that's not how that works. While I did like the diary entries to kind of break up the structure, the book is also really slow and meanders quite a bit. The setup and premise for this book is so good, and it felt like Sayers had so many great ideas, and instead of narrowing them down to the ones that work and work well together, just threw everything in one book and was just, okay, here's all my ideas together and all jumbled up. Enjoy. I did not. The first part of the book kind of feels like filler in that way. I said this in another review that I get setting the stage and making the world realistic, but there was just so much tedium until we get to the circus from hell. Do not tease me with this amazing circus that's happening in Paris when most of the book we're frolicking around Podunk, Virginia, as Laura's depressed about her Laura's depressed about her fiance jilting her on their wedding day. That is what kicks off everything, and it's a good mystery until the reveal, and then you're just kind of like, oh, okay, I guess we're done with that. On the Paris side, I did feel that the constant name dropping of the famous artists, while meant to ground the story in reality, kind of did the exact opposite for me. I mean, how convenient that they all hang out together and welcome a half-demon into their circle. Like, had she picked just like one artist that like had a small group of friends and happened to be in the same area, I think it would have worked a little bit better, but it was just this constant, like, look at all these famous people that, existed in this timeline, and oh, by the by, they all hung out at this exact same bar, like, okay. Lastly, on the bad, I did say that I didn't like Laura and Ben's relationship, but I also think it could have been excised and would not have changed the story too much, besides him being the one uncovering certain things about Todd, her missing fiancé, and just all the different connections. I think Laura could have had a bigger hand in figuring out her own family's history and what happened to Todd herself, and then the romance with Ben. Again, while I kind of liked it, it didn't add too much to the story, and it almost would have been more interesting to focus on her relationship with her mother, Audrey, or even, who she thought was her grandmother, since it is the ladies of the Secret Circus. Let's focus on the ladies then. All right, moving on to the ugly. So, Laura is a Mary Sue. Color me shocked. Like some Mary Sues in recent fiction, she felt a little blank. And I know that's weird, given that I was, ranting about how much into music she is. But she still just felt, I don't know, I didn't know her. She didn't have that many, personality traits to really ground her in reality. She kind of felt like a blank slate that the reader is supposed to project themselves onto. But then she also has very specific ways she feels about things, but also not enough that I fully understand her character. Or some of the decisions she would make sometimes seem to contradict her earlier thoughts or earlier actions she had taken or who she said she was. So sometimes it was a little hard to identify with Laura as a main character. Another character that felt really weird was the villain of Alcazar. He is supposed to be chaotic and the demon of fun shit. But he's kind of not fun. I think Lucifer from Supernatural is a pretty well done big bad. He's horrible. He embraces what he has done and what has happened to him, says exactly what he's thinking. And he's also funny along the way. Grandpa Demon over here is not. He's petulant, he's a brat, and he kind of sucks. And not in the way that we're supposed to think he does. And he's also kind of a Mary Sue too. So on page 341, when he's talking about basically how Laura's family came to be, so he had a child with, I believe, Juno is supposed to be fully human. Honestly, I don't remember if that was actually ever explained. But it's page 341. He ignored her. Perhaps I failed to fully explain the rules to Juno. So enraptured with her was I. You see, my love was a human, and I a demon. There are laws against this type of coupling. It's frankly forbidden. I mean, I didn't create the laws, but I was never much of a rule follower anyway. Well, Juno died in childbirth. All the women who bear my children die. It's too much for a human to carry a demon's baby, no matter what Mia Farrow does on screen. In fact, the offspring die too. Except in this case, they didn't. Before she died, my dear Juno gave birth to an imperfectly perfect creature, a rare cambion. It was the perfect amalgamation of good, Juno, and evil, well, me. Really, do you have a mustache you can twirl right now? Like, we get it. You called yourself a demon. We understand that means that you're evil. That does not have to be explained to us. And I don't know. It's just the whole, oh, all these other women have died trying to have my babies. Like, then stop procreating, maybe? I don't know. And then he also just has this weird attachment with Juno specifically, that it seems like he's really upset that she died. But you knew this was going to happen. Like, it seems like he really loved her, but then he's also supposed to just be this chaotic demon. Again, pick a lane. Pick one thing and stick to it. Moving on to the other parts of The Ugly that I didn't like. What the fuck is going on with this ending? Are you kidding me? Your mom sacrifices herself and you just say, fuck it, I'll join her too. She did that for you, you fool. You don't get to throw your mom's sacrifice back in her face by being like, well, actually, I know that you wanted nothing to do with magic. You wanted to be human and mortal and this, and like never was interested in chasing down our family secrets. You gave up your life to keep me safe until Laura eventually dies and then has to join the circus anyway. In the epilogue, she just basically is like, well, we're gonna go to the circus because that's where I belong. Like, your mom tried to buy you like another 50 years. What the hell are you doing? Another thing on The Ugly is, again, the book has a lot of descriptions and it is also very repetitive. Like, we would read about Cecile's pregnancy, but sure, let's have that conversation in real time in the very next chapter. We, as the readers, we can understand what's going on between the scenes, so that I don't need to read about it in her diary entry and then see her reenact that conversation and then see her summarize that conversation in a diary entry. Like, again, I promise you, I can keep up. So what's the point of the circus? To humiliate those who went to hell? To scare people away from being bad? Or, on that note, how did it get started? Was Satan just bored and asked Alcazar to put together a circus for him? Why do they perform for mortals? In all of your descriptions of her putting a disc or a vinyl on the record player, can I get a description of how this circus came to be? Of how he finds these humans to have babies with? I don't know. Maybe that's where I could get some of my description. And then lastly, for a book about the ladies of the Secret Circus, I'd have liked to see more of the circus part. When we do get to those areas, it is really well written and it wants to pull me into the story, but we just didn't get enough of it. Again, the first part of the book feels a lot like filler, setting up who Laura is, when really the back cover kind of promises ooh, this dark, mysterious, demonic circus. Okay, get us there faster. All right, so that's it for the good, the bad, and the ugly of the ladies of the Secret Circus. Did you read this book? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Otherwise, I'll see you next time on Whine Club.